Hey everybody, it's Jane Johnston with the Bar Hill Group at Remax Wilson. I'm so excited today because I figured out how to do the cover and the overlay all in one. I'm here today with...
Hi, it's Andrew Plank here, and that's such exciting news, Jane. Such exciting news. Hi, everybody. Good to be back.
How are you doing?
Good. It's been a good week, busy, and still getting some nice weather out there. So loving it.
Did you find things really picked up this past week? First week of September?
Actually, no, not for me. Listing getting moderate activity. Would have liked to have seen more. And I am lining up. It looks like I'm going to have some more listings coming up. Active buyers, but no, I'm not seeing a big jump. I'm hoping to see a big jump. Are you noticing a big jump?
I just noticed my phone started ringing off the hook. I didn't really believe it was going to happen, but it did start happening. And more listings.
This business, everybody's business is their own. And for some ways, there's the big market cycles, and then there's our individual cycles, I find. And I will talk to an agent who's dead slow while I'm run off my feet, and then vice versa. And I'm saying, well, where's all the business coming from? Why is everybody else so busy? And then it hits me, and it's just off you go. Yeah.
It's kind of like living on top of a pulse. And I always find that maybe some people are on a different wavelength than I am, literally. Mm-hmm. Okay. So speaking of which, I have a showing today. So let's look.
Wait, you have to go today early, right?
10:30.
10:30 it is. Hard stop.
Ooh, okay. So I'll do the first part. You can do the second part. So we have 271 net unconditional sales to date. So we're halfway through the month. That's compared to 989 last year. It was exceptional last year. So I don't know if we're on par. We're definitely not up where we were last year, but I'm expecting it to be still strong. New listings at 383 to date, and that's compared to 1294 for September 2020. And active listings were really low at 1,180 compared to 2,389 last year.
Broken record. But this is, when you think about these numbers, 1,180 is just such, that's for the greater Victoria area. That's condos, townhouses, houses, mobile homes. I think commercial properties as well is captured in this. This is a lot. This is very few considering the size of Victoria and what we traditionally see. So still such low inventory puts high demand on housing and prices, and big frustration. Okay, so Market Watch, the section down below. This is what's happened in the last week. So in the last week, we've had 227 new listings go live on market. We've also had 160 listings go pending, meaning that people have unconditionally agreed to purchase these homes. 37 homes have price decreased. So again, even in a really hot market like this with low inventory, people still have, who, if they've listed a little optimistically, missed the mark. They're still having to decrease price. And then 2 price increases. That's either because somebody made an error in the original listing when they posted it. I see that all the time. Listing a $300,000 condo for $3 million. Got to correct that one pretty quick. Or conversely, a $3 million home for $300,000.
That always gets a lot of calls.
Yeah, you do. And so, 108 completed sales, 10 expired, 2 withdrawn. So
I just want to say that for the last few weeks of August, the list to sale ratio was new listings, let's say 100 and 120 pending. And that was over two weeks. And now we're at new listings 227, 160 pending. And the reason for that is because the new listings are up because a lot of people come off holidays and they've had a discussion with their partner and they've said, okay, you know what? We've had some time to think. Let's get this place going.
Yeah, I've been telling my clients, and I hope that I'm right, that my buyer clients, that, have hope. September will bring more listings. We're going to find you something in September. But at the same time, don't have too much hope because it's going to slow down in November, December. So we've got a window. We've got a window now where we expect or anticipate we'll see more listings because this is traditionally the time. It's either the spring or the fall. Spring is the big one. Fall is the second largest.
Okay, so I have 3 listings coming up. A townhouse in Vic West, right? Actually, split. The townhouse is split on the border between Vic West and the Esquimalt. That's going to be 600,000. It's a 2-bedroom, multi-level. And I have a condo coming up in Songhees that's going to be 969. That's 2-bedroom. It's quite a large condo, 1,500 square feet.
Uh-huh.
And I have a townhouse 55 plus in Colwood coming up. Do you have any listings coming up?
I've got a townhouse coming up in James Bay. It's going to be it's 2 beds up with a sort of office bed down on the main floor, 3 levels. We're still waiting on floor plans. I'd say it's around 1,600 square feet, and it's going to be 750.
Awesome.
Yeah, and single car garage with that as well. And I may have a buyer for your townhouse in Vic West, so I want to hear more about that. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
It'll be loaded this week.
Okay.
This is how real estate happens, folks. Okay, first of all, we're going to talk about insurance. Now, often when people write a clause in a contract, this is the standard clause we have in what's called our addendum 2, subject to the buyer obtaining approval for fire and property insurance satisfactory to the buyer on the property on or before, and it's very broad.
Let's take a step back here and just mention that, of course, this is number 4 of 5. I think 5 standard conditions that we generally have. So there's, obviously, if you're going to buy a home and you need to do some due diligence, there's going to be financing required. You want to do a review of the title. You want to you want to get a building inspection potentially, and what was the other one?
Financing, inspection, review of the title, review of the property disclosure, and insurance.
Disclosure, yeah. So insurance, why is that important, Jane? Why is it important that you can get insurance on your property?
Okay, well, the one thing that people don't realize is unless you have insurance in place, you can't get a mortgage.
Right.
And we actually send a checklist with our buyers when they're interested in a property and they've got an accepted offer. Yep. And we recommend sending a copy of the listing to an insurance broker so that they get a quote. And the quote doesn't mean that the insurance happens right away. It means it's a quote for the insurance to happen when the mortgage happens. Right. And I'm finding they're more and more picky. What about you?
That I'm not experiencing, but over the years, I've always found that they do get kind of picky about, if you send them information, they want more than just what is in the MLS listing. And they're going to really they're not going to just take the old listing, the old insurance from the sellers, because I often ask for who is the insurance from the sellers, what's their, what company are they with? And so that my clients can just call that company directly and say, look, you're already insuring this property. Can we get insurance on this? And they will often, they'll want a new, sort of overview of that property. They'll ask all of their new questions. How old is the hot water tank? Is there any poly bead piping, any knob and tube? They'll want to see sometimes the inspection report. Yeah. So there is that. But the reason that I suggest going to the original one, and because I used to work in insurance, is if there was a problem on midnight, when you do the transition of ownership, you've got one company arguing over, let's say there's a fire that starts at 11 p.m. and starts to destroy the house throughout the evening. Insurance transfers over at midnight. You don't have 2 companies arguing over who pays the bill. You got one company. That's one of the reasons for it. It's also simpler.
Huh, that's interesting. I always, I sort of changed my opinion on insurance financing or insurance for stratas, and that I've said, I think you should go with the company that's insuring the building.
Yes.
Because then they're not fighting over it as well.
Yes.
That's a really great point.
I do the same. Yeah. And that's part of as you mentioned, we send out sort of this congratulations on your accepted offer, or, here's the next steps, and please double check on your insurance. So here's the thing: you go to this. We said something that might have been a little misleading, or not misleading, but misinterpreted by some people. That is, it's going to be a requirement of your mortgage approval that you get fire and property insurance. You might get approved and say, okay, I'm approved, I'm fine. That doesn't mean that when it comes to sign the documents with your lawyer, if there's been a fundamental change or they haven't got their checklist full of the things that they're looking for, one of which will be that there is fire and property insurance, lined up and in place, you won't be getting your mortgage.
Yeah.
That's the key point of this whole thing.
Well, and also for the insurance, as you mentioned, so when people write an unconditional offer, often they don't write in a clause about going in one or two more times for an appraisal, which the bank will require usually, especially if you have over 20%. And also to answer your insurance questions. And you really want to have a professional in there with you so they can tell you the percentage of different types of piping. So for instance, is it copper? Is it poly B? Is it plastic PVC, or is it whatever the different types? And then the wiring is an issue. So we have copper versus aluminum, the age of the hot water tank, the age of the oil tank.
If you haven't done a building inspection or there wasn't a pre-inspection available from the seller because you were competing and you decided to forego that, just like the property so much, you don't have the information that will be helpful for the insurance company. So you might want to have access to the property after the fact. Now, you're probably not going to get access for a building inspection after the fact. You'll have to wait till you're inside, because I don't think I think most sellers would be advised against letting a building inspector in during the interim period, simply because there's a risk of something being discovered that could collapse, that the buyer might try to get out of the deal even though they have no legal reason or legal recourse to do so. But Jane did mention something. It is important because, again, people are writing unconditional offers. Getting access after the fact for an appraisal, really important if you are going to be financing the property and you just made that offer unconditional and yet still needed to do some due diligence on your own side.
So I just also wanted to show a clause that I've started adding in the past year which is absolutely essential, I think. Let me just find it, to pull it up. And this one is for stratas. And the reason for it is because not only sometimes you need insurance for the building, but you need insurance for your insurance. And this is the case where there's been water or something, or the building is undergoing a reevaluation for their insurance, and you really need to ensure that, play on words there, you really need to ensure that the building is covered, because if the building isn't covered, then you can't get mortgage financing.
Right. So if you're buying a condo, if you're buying a townhouse, if you're buying a duplex, a half duplex unit, anything that's strata, even bare land strata, there's going to be a group insurance policy on the property, and you need to confirm that it's there. So that's first kind of intention of this one is, first of all, confirm that the strata corporation is actually insuring this property. But secondly, they may be insuring it, but there may be gaps. There may be really high deductibles for water. There might be some issues where you take responsible as owner if there's an overflow of your sink and it does the 3 floors below a lot of damage. So you really want to know and be able to look at that and then mitigate that with your own insurance coverage to cover any gaps that this causes. So it's a really good clause. I have the similar one, and it's really important.
And I noticed that in the addendum for the contract of purchase and sale, they do have actually, and even in the property disclosure statement for stratas, they now have a box that you will be providing a copy of this insurance to buyers. And it's funny because when I had a client selling a few years ago, I requested this of a strata, and the strata person who said they were, I was a strata manager for 10 years and nobody's ever asked me that. And I'm like, well, It's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it's not an unreasonable request, number one. Number two, it has been more on the radar in the last couple of years, with insurance rates going up, with insurance coverage getting harder to get, and with those deductibles being, going through the roof for things like, again, water damage and so forth. So it's become really commonplace that we ask for this, whereas maybe 5 years ago, it was a lot less on our radar. And this is the evolution of real estate. This is what happens as new issues come up, we adapt and we try to come up with new protections and coverages for our clients.
Yeah, and I had a client buy in December. We looked at a number of different buildings, and one of the factors that we considered was what was the deductible for water damage. The deductible is dependent on what type of plumbing is in the building and what the history of the plumbing leaks are. And in one building, which I won't name, they had copper plumbing, but they had pinhole leaks happening throughout the whole building. And then when we went into the unit itself, we noticed poly B between the tap and the dishwasher, which I said is just an accident waiting to happen. So you really have to be careful. And that in that building, the deductible was $100,000. So you actually have to get insurance for the deductible.
It's interesting what you said about the poly B, because I've been through a number of building inspections where the inspectors, poly B is a piping, plastic piping that was common in the 90s, and in some areas it had a lot of problems with burst pipes or the fittings coming off, and I think it was generally in areas where the water was harder and it was doing some sort of reaction to the piping. So we haven't had a lot, and it depends on the fittings that's holding it together. And some insurance companies don't have a problem with it. Some building inspectors don't really seem too concerned about it. Other insurance companies have a big problem with it. And that leads to actually something else I wanted to say is making an offer on a home without a building inspection, not subject to insurance and all of that. There are times when a home, you might think, well, it's no problem, I'll get insurance, no problem at all. But no, some homes are not insurable. And it's rare.
Uninsurable.
Yes, uninsurable. Yeah. So there's no heating source. There's no power. It's a 60 amp power source, maybe, panel. It's a really old panel. It's just a wood stove heating it. There's areas where there might be exceptions where they say, we won't insure you for the unapproved fireplace. And there's also areas where they're just not going to get any coverage for it as well at all. Maybe it's a rural property that's not got proper work or permits. So it's really important to know that piece as well, that some homes are just non-insurable. You can't just assume I'm going to get insurance.
Right.
But it's.
So now I find when I got into real estate, I used to say, I have a lot of time on my hands. The advantage of working with me is I have a lot of time on my hands.
Right.
And now the advantage of working with me is I've seen so much.
Yeah.
We've both seen. So I went into a house the other day and there was smoke all over the ceiling from cigarette smoke. It was all stained nicotine. So we talked about remediating that. Yeah. Then we go outside, we're looking at the roof and I'm like, okay, well, I can see they've done this and this, and I can tell the roof was done correctly. I'm not a building inspector, but I'm seeing the way that they've angled the things to direct water, and there's some signs of quality that I can just see. And then we go into the basement and there's knob and tube wiring, and I'm like, there's knob and tube wiring.
It gets burned into us when we're first licensed that we are not building inspectors and we shouldn't speak to building inspection stuff. At the same time, we have eyes and ears, and we've seen many, many building inspections. And if we see knob and tube wiring, we're going to point it out, right? I'm sorry, Jane, go on, but
yeah. Well, then I go into the utility room and I see a hot water tank, and it has 2012, and I'm like, well, it's on the border of you're going to have to replace this hot water tank. And then it was on and on, and here's some water damage. I was seeing efflorescence in the basement. And I'm like, I don't know if you want this house.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard when we're kind of making these assumptions and we don't want to talk our clients out of something that they may actually still want to go forward with, because they are knowledgeable buyers or something, or they're, they know these risks. But at the same time, we really want to point these things out, and we
Yeah.
want to make them aware of it. But we don't want them to rely so much on it that they say, oh, you know what, we're fine because everything you've told us tells us that we don't need a building inspection. I mean, usually those things that we're telling them are things to highlight problems of why they need a building inspection or why there should be further investigation. But we don't want them to trust us so much in our building assessment that they forego an actual professional for that.
I had a realtor come and tell me the other day that they wouldn't be writing because the perimeter drains were shot. And I said, well, there's no water in the basement, and I didn't see any efflorescence, and it doesn't smell. And she's like, oh, well, there was a lot of foliage and stuff around the and plants. And I'm like, well, I mean, there could be, but if they've had the perimeter drains cleaned, then there may not be. I mean, you're talking best practices. So anyway, it was interesting. Really, we have to stick with just what's observable, I think.
Yeah.
And we can't, as realtors, tell people, we can only tell you what we're seeing. Like, we may see knob and tube. We can't tell them if it's active.
Yeah, right. Or even if it's active, we can't tell if it's, sometimes knob and tube is not a problem if it's wired in properly with the rest of the home. So again, some insurance companies are fine with that. It can be absolutely safe as long as it's not miswired, as long as it hasn't been improper. Anyway, these are all things that we have learned over the years from sitting in on building inspections, but doesn't make us experts.
Right.
It just makes us people who have observed these and able to comment on it, I think, to a higher degree.
Yeah, and say, you know what, this deserves for further inspection.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
And no, I was just saying, insurance, this is what we're talking about, is, making sure that you do your due diligence. And even if you are making an offer if you are making an offer that is unconditional, understand that, or you're trying to clean up your conditions, understand what the risks are of removing a condition, even as someone as simple as insurance, where a lot of times it is a fairly simple one to remove and it cleans up an offer somewhat, but it's also kind of no-brainer. Like if I'm wearing my seller's agent hat and I see an offer that is conditional on, financing and building inspection and everything in the list, including insurance, I'm gonna think, okay, that's a fully conditional offer. If I see that they've waived financing and title, let's say, but it's still insurance and title, but it's still subject to financing and building inspection, I'm going to still consider it 90% of a fully conditional offer, because those are the two big ones that I consider the big hurdles. And so, keeping it or removing it isn't, if it's the only condition on a property, I'm probably going to tell my clients, this isn't a big deal. It's still, you can drive a truck through any condition, but that one should be one that can be fulfilled.
Well, the other thing is, people should, if they do waive it, either try and get the building inspection done before they actually submit the offer, or allow for 2 visits in order to ascertain the information you need to get the insurance. Otherwise, you can't write the deal. So we've had that happen where previously, like 5 years ago, we didn't do that, and the seller didn't let us through.
Yeah.
So we had to submit questions and get the answers.
Yeah, and that's often after an offer is made, that your buyer is doing their due diligence and they're getting all these extra questions from their insurance company, and then they're coming back to us. Then we go to the realtor who goes to their client and asks those questions. And sometimes they're answered quickly and satisfactorily, and sometimes it's just goes into a little black hole of silence. And it's really important that you, it's just helpful to have those things done in advance. Yes. And, we both, I think, write in, I write in that, access after unconditional for purposes of measurements and bringing in contractors and, essentially, additional
Support.
Support.
Okay, I have to tootle off to my showing at 11. So I just want to say, pleasure seeing you. It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah. It's it was a good long weekend. Got out to the Sanderson Fair on the long weekend, and then this last weekend I got out to Rib Fest and ate way too many ribs.
I've lost 20 pounds.
Good for you. You're looking great. Yeah.
One chin left.
I've lost 5.
Good. Anyway, health is important. So
yeah.
And that's one of the challenges with being a realtor is balance in our lifestyles. So good for you for spending time with your family.
Yeah. Of the conversations we tend to have as realtors, a lot of times we're talking balance. Anyway.
True.
Jane, great to see you. Have an awesome week. Enjoy your showings. I look forward to hearing about your other listing coming up. I'll be out with some buyers as well this week and with my new listing as well. So we're both going to be busy, and hopefully it's a busy September, and we'll see what the spring brings. We should talk about that soon.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want everybody to subscribe. Bonk. Please check us out every Monday morning at 10 a.m. where he said, she said, they said a real discussion on real estate in Victoria. I'm Jane Johnston. And do you want to just tell people how to get in touch with you?
Sure. I thought okay. Well, I'm Andrew Plank. I'm with Royal LePage. I am, you can reach me by phone or text 250-360-6106, email info@andrewplank.com. Check out my website, andrewplank.com, with additional information there. And Jane, did you tell people how to reach you?
My name is Jane Johnston. I'm with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. You can reach me at 250-744-0775. My email is briarhillgroup@gmail.com. I have 2 websites. One is briarhillgroup.com for those who are interested in buying and selling real estate. And for those who want to know about neighborhoods, entrepreneurship, and this show, you can go to vancouverislandtime.com and watch our past episodes. All right. Have a great week. And we will see you next Monday.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.